Well, thanks everybody for coming. It's been a blast getting to know everyone during this kind of networking period we have here. It's going to be a fun time. It's going to be a fun night. Firstly and foremost, I wanted to thank, where's Delina? She knew I was going to shout her out and she disappeared. Delina's here. There she is. Delina at the back. Give us a wave, Delina. So Delina organized this whole thing, made it look good, organized the vendors, organized the chairs, everything. So big, huge shout out to Delina. Also big, huge shout out to our guests. Bruce at the back here, Dan, Nick, and Dave. It's going to be a really interesting chat, and hopefully everybody sticks around as well afterwards for some more schmoozing and networking and doing what we do best, which is shaking hands. Here at myAbode, I don't know, I've chatted with a lot of people here. I haven't chatted with everybody, so maybe I'll do a quick once-over, tell you where you guys are right now. This is our office. Welcome to myAbode. Pun intended. We try to solve two big problems in the industry right now. One is profitability, and the other is compliance. On profitability, 71% of brokerages today, in this year, in 2025, across North America, are unprofitable, which is a crazy, crazy number. The reason for that is during the run-up of 2020, 2021, even first half of 2022, volumes were super, super high. People needed to grow. Brokerages needed to grow. People needed to hire staff to process deals. And what happens when that relatively volatile volume goes from way up here to 50% of what it was, which is what's happened. So that squeeze has really, well, put a lot of pressure on margins for brokerages. It's been a tougher time for brokerage owners in the last little while for that reason. You have high fixed costs and revenues that have been suppressed. We help solve that problem with our model, which the way we do that is we actually allow brokerages to transition that fixed cost to a per transaction cost for your back office processing. So if you have a super busy month, great, no problem. If you have a next, let's say any December ever, where you're not very busy, or, a down quarter, or more timely, the last 2.5 years, volumes are a lot more, well, they're down, which of course means you lose money. Now with us, since we charge on a per transaction basis, we can transition that entire back office system to a per transaction basis, which means if you make zero, you only do a few deals, 1 month, you're down 50% in volume, your costs are also down as well, meaning that you stay profitable even in low months. Now, if you were to explode the next month and you were to triple that volume, we also save the headache of having to hire, find, manage, recruit, manage a staff. So in down months, you stay profitable as a broker owner. And in up months, you save a lot of headache because you no longer have to deal with finding the right people, managing the right people, dealing with vacations, especially a small, medium-sized brokerage where you only may have a few brokers of record or a few administrators, deal administrators. If somebody takes a vacation in March, that's a big gap that you have to make up for. So we help with that and keep brokerages profitable through our model. Secondly, we help with compliance too. So compliance a month ago was a much more boring word than it is right now. And we help with that with our proprietary technology that we've built, that helps brokerages stay compliant. Everything from complete audit trails of your emails back and forth with your deal administrators and your agents, all the way to actually having physical staff that are based here in Toronto that do 25,000 transactions a year in Ontario. We do 25,000 transactions this year, probably will be a little bit more than that, for 7,000 agents in Ontario. Almost 7,000, not quite. We're getting there though. So at the end of the day, we help brokerages stay safe and stay compliant with our team of specialists and our proprietary technology that we've built so that you can grow as much as you want to. You can win that time back in your day-to-day. And at the end of the day, you can stay safe and grow profitably at the same time. So that's a little bit about what we do here. And that's probably all, well, maybe not all you'll hear of me tonight, but next I wanted to invite up Dave Hutch, and I wanted to say a quick something about Dave as well. I don't know if you're familiar with who Dave Hutch is. Dave's got, I don't know, at least 50,000 followers, give or take, something like that. Across social media as well, and is a well-respected guy in the industry. He's going to tell us a lot about, or a bit about himself, and a bit about Valerie Real Estate, our partner for tonight, at the same time. So, Dave, welcome aboard.
Got it. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. I wrote down some notes on my phone, and I hope that's okay with everybody. First of all, thanks, Dan. Thanks, Nick. Thanks, Bruce, Alex, for having me up here and having us here. The reason I wrote down notes on my phone is because you're all unwillingly going to have to listen to me, regardless of whether it's 5 minutes or not. And I was told this is 5 minutes only. So if I don't get the notes, it's not going to be fun for either of us, I promise. Who am I? My name is Dave Hutchinson. I'm the Vice President of Growth at Valerie Real Estate. I have one of the fastest online growing communities in North America called Real Estate Money. But at the end of the day, my job is to speak to realtors every single day and hear their pain points, hear what's going wrong with their business, but more importantly, like, how can we solve those problems? Before I get into this, who's a realtor in here? Thank God. I was like, no one's a realtor in here. This is going to be useless. So that makes me happy. What is Valerie Real Estate? Anybody heard of us, Valerie Real Estate? We're a fairly new brokerage. Oh my goodness, look at this. What a win. Valerie is Canada's first AI brokerage. Now, AI is probably the most buzzword of 2025. I think if you toss AI in front of anything, you get a bit more views. Maybe that's why I've gotten 7 followers. But it's much more than that. And our vision and our goal at Valerie is to use AI to solve the problems of like the day-to-day realtor. I feel there are 2 main problems that realtors face, in my opinion, when it comes to growing a business or scaling a business or becoming successful, honestly. And those 2 big problems I find are, number 1, the admin bottleneck. For those of that realtors in here, who has an assistant? Okay, so the rest of you. How frustrating is admin work? You know, writing offers, back-end stuff. It's challenging, and it takes up time. And the problem is, to scale into the high 6 figures, I strongly believe that you need help, you know, because you can only service clients so well by yourself. And the more clients you take on, that takes away from your actual ability to focus on paperwork, focus on the deal stuff. And that actually is extremely important. You know, as realtors, we all know this, but we wear many hats. You know, we're admin, we're marketing, we're sales, we're the therapist, we're everything. So it's challenging, but AI has advanced so much lately that it can help with some of that back-end work. And this is not a part of the script. I'm going to say it anyways. Realtors we want AI so badly to do the things that we don't want to do. You know, we want AI to do the phone calls and the showings, and it's like, what? Just, you know, AI right now can handle a lot of the back-end work. It can handle writing offers. Okay, it can handle booking a schedule for you. It can write emails for you. It can pull data for you. It can help you better serve your clients. And that's what we're doing at Valerie. The other major problem is follow-up failures. I'm a big believer in this. If anyone does follow me on here on social media, maybe. But I'm a big believer that where realtors lose out on a ton of money is by lacking follow-up with the relationship that they've built. Because real estate's actually very simple boiled down. It's how many people can you meet? How many relationships can you build? But then more importantly, how long and how well can you manage and nurture that relationship? Because the realtor that manages that relationship the longest is the one that's gonna win, honestly. And the CRM that we've built at Valerie does that for you. So it's great because you as a realtor, you spend all this time marketing, all this time spending money, building, meeting people, going to these events, all right, collecting business cards, whatever you may do, toss them in the CRM, and then nothing, you know? No calls, nothing over the next couple of years. And agents like us at Valerie, we're staying top of mind continuously and letting AI do that for us, which allows us to then focus on what we're really good at, which is what most of us got in this industry for, is to meet people, build relationships, and fill up your pipeline. Cool? Like, at the end of the day, AI and what we're doing at Valerie is just allowing agents to buy back their time so that we can focus on what's important, which is selling more real estate. And honestly, that's it. My last line, I'll be fully transparent. ChatGPT wrote this for me, and I'm looking at this, and most of it was, give me a break. I wrong most of that. But my call to action is my favorite line is, can we guess it? AI isn't here. Hold on. AI is not here to replace realtors, but AI will replace the, what is it? AI will replace the realtor that's not, thank you. So, no, thank you, but that's it. Valerie, yeah. Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right. Our next segment is literally just AI talking with itself. No, super excited to bring up our main, the reason we're all here pretty much, right? Other than, of course, meeting everybody and, being awesome real estate professionals. Wanted to bring up Dan Foch, Nick Hill from the Canadian Real Estate Investor Podcast, the largest podcast focused on real estate in the country. Also two great guys. And of course, Bruce Croxon. You might remember him from the days of Dragon's Den back in the day, or from his work on Round 13 Capital. But we will learn more about what each of these guys has going on and are in for a really fun treat. So, folks, thanks so much for coming to give us a really good show here. And you each have mics?
Yes, sir.
So you're good to go. Enjoy, fellas.
Thank you.
What's going on, everybody? Good to see everybody on a beautiful Toronto day like this. And I'm just going to start things off by saying this is a huge win for me. I'm not trying to age Bruce or myself here.
I can age myself. I don't need your help. That's one thing
I'll leave that to you then. Yeah, I mean, obviously a huge fan. I mean, who in here watched Dragon's Den? Come on. Groundbreaking television show for Canadian entrepreneurs. And I'd like to think that probably everyone in this room is an entrepreneur. In one way or another, if you are a real estate agent, you're an entrepreneur. If you're a mortgage agent, you're an entrepreneur. And I know that there are several business owners and people doing big things in here. And I think shows like Dragon's Den and the American version Shark Tank are just huge for youth and for anyone that's looking to explore that side of things. So I just want to again thank Bruce for giving everybody here the time and us the opportunity to interview things. So before we get into it, Dan, anything that you want to start off with?
No, I'm good. Go ahead.
Bruce, we all know you as a dragon. Some of us know you from BNN. You're a podcaster as well. You've done so many amazing things, but tell us a bit about the origin story. Before you had sold Lava Life and had been a VC and all these things. Bring us all the way back to day one.
Short version, yeah. Well, listen, I am a lifelong entrepreneur, and as I've said before, I've come and spoken to the agents, in the last couple of months, and I always start by saying I'm most at home in a room with other entrepreneurs, and I've always considered brokers and agents the ultimate entrepreneur, because it's as simple as if you get up in the morning, if you don't do a deal, you don't do a deal that week, you don't do a deal that month, you don't eat, right? So that's the grind, and that's the grind that I've been involved in all of my career. One of my first jobs was planting trees. I liked planting trees because they paid you by the tree. So, really the reward was in direct correlation to how hard you worked. And before that, I think I'm a first generation Canadian. My mom's Jamaican. My dad came from England. They met in Canada. They like a lot of immigrants, they got to work. so I had a front row seat to, a guy in this case, because back then, the men were usually the ones out there doing the thing. And he had a grade 8 education and $40 in his pocket, and he got to work. And so I watched this guy, and sort of got a really early dose of, if you're going to be successful as an entrepreneur, it's going to require a lot of work. So, I think my values that way were set pretty early. Had a number of projects. Decided early for that I wanted to do my own thing and wanted to be an entrepreneur. I wanted to sort of follow my dad's footsteps. He was a car dealer back in the day when manufacturers would back people with little resources. They'd finance you to do it if they saw promise. So I watched him do that from nothing. So I kind of wanted to try and, as best I could, replicate that journey. So tried a number of different projects over the years. One of my first gigs was actually selling cars at the lot, right? So again, you don't sell, you don't make, you don't eat. Know if I ever stopped to calculate, how much I was being paid by the hour for all this work, I'd cry. I mean, I was kind of on the right track because I liked what I was doing, and got a bit lucky, with the whole online dating thing. We were monkeying around with an interactive technology that is now known as voicemail, and found out through trial and error, and really was the first time that data was ever measured online. When you think about it, late 80s, push 1 into a computer for this, push 2 for this, and then you'd spit out a report in the morning about where people had traveled, through the phone system. And, we were marketing a number of services and found out, no big surprise in hindsight, that the most popular section of the menu was, men that wanted to meet women and women wanted to meet men. So that was really the onset of the online dating industry, and we were at the forefront of it and created a brand. And I don't see too many of my former clients in here tonight. Oh, wait, there's a couple. Yeah, it's okay. And we grew that and exited it in 2004, stayed on as CEO for a couple of years, and started, with, I was the easiest touch in town for a check back then. And I started doing angel investments, and didn't do it particularly well, but was having fun and learning a bit as I went, and then enjoyed it enough that decided to get a bit more formal and put together Round 13. And Dragon's Den came calling in and around the same time, so that took care of the marketing part of Round 13, because unbeknownst to me, I hadn't seen the show before I went on it, and I haven't watched it since, but as I learned...
But sorry, you watched all your episodes?
Yeah, only mine, and I made the kids watch them, no. Anyway, no. But I found out that it was a pretty popular show, right? So, and I put my name out as, look, if you're a tech entrepreneur and you're looking for financing, I'd be a good call to make. And so that took care of the funnel of opportunity. And then I was, fortunate enough along the way to meet guys like Wilson Lee and Bram Clark in the audience today, who are a lot better investors than I'll ever be. And they're off executing now all the new capital that Round 13 has under management. And this has been one of our /investment creations, myAbode, and, totally excited to be bringing technology enablement, really, as you heard from the outset, to a very traditional industry that I have a great deal of respect for, and very close to people's, right at the top of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Tough to live without a roof over your head in Canada. It happens, unfortunately, sometimes, but very difficult if you don't have the means to put a roof over your head. So I think the marriage of our background in tech and software development and enablement and our respect for agents and brokers has been a beautiful marriage of, accelerating sort of efficiency and compliance and, the things that, we're in a bit of an arms race technology-wise to be the best and the biggest. And I think I think we're well on the way to do this.
So what does that look like specifically, like in the real estate space? Like, what do you identify as the biggest pain point that professionals, you obviously have very in touch with the entrepreneurial spirit and what, people, brokerage operators and real estate professionals are dealing with right now? I think Alex covered a lot of it, but like, what is the big vision and problem that you're trying to solve for right now?
Well, we heard about it just, recently through the admin part of it, right? And the compliance part of it, and the getting it done quick part of it, and the being paid your commissions part of it. And increasingly, I think what we're going to find, the arms race I loosely referred to, AI-based, it's going to be the knowledge, the access to the knowledge and the data and, the information that you're going to need to do your job better. That is an aggregation of transactions that are happening all across the country. Right now, it's being done in a very fragmented way. We'd like to think that, the path that we're on, being the best and the biggest, we're going to have an inside track to gathering that data and feeding it back to make better decisions.
With there's all this talk about AI these days, as Dave alluded to. It's the buzzword. But what does AI really mean for real estate? How do you see it kind of connecting, interjecting, head-on collision? You were early in one space, and you've proven to be early in many others. Mm-hmm. I think there's been a huge push for real estate, construction, the mortgage space, which are all a little more archaic and have been resistant to change in the past. I feel like there's waves of change coming, and you guys are on the forefront. So what does that mean for you from your perspective with AI and how that is actually going to change things?
Well, so the first thing I'd say is, the 90% of what you read about AI is kind of fear-based, because a lot of it is designed to replace, what people do. Like, this is the way we used to do it. We don't need people anymore because the technology is going to handle it. And I think there's certain categories where that just simply doesn't apply. I referred to, it wasn't a great student, admittedly, but I do remember that guy Maslow, right? The hierarchy of needs thing, where the food in your stomach, food and water, you can't survive if you don't eat. The next thing, especially in Canada, as I referenced, that you need is a roof over your head. And those, and luckily for me in the Lava Life days, the next thing you were looking for is someone to lie down beside at night, right? So that's how the hierarchy
really
went.
Took that hierarchy.
I did.
Yes.
So I knew I wasn't having to convince somebody there was a human need for something that didn't exist, right? It was pretty obvious in hindsight. So I think the first thing to recognize is, this purchase, this asset class, is so vital and important and such a major one. You've heard it so many times before, so I'm not telling you repeating anything you haven't heard, but it's there's no way that humans aren't going to be part of it. It's just there's tons of knowledge. There's the trust factor that is so prominent. But what we are going to see, I think, a lot more of is agent enablement, and those experts having easier access to aggregated data that might actually be our own, rather than, the open data that's shared with everybody else. It would be nice to have our own proprietary take on the data and what it means and feed that into agents to do a better job. We made an investment in Mave, for valuations, right? For example, feeding that back into the agent pipeline so that they can share that with their clients, and I think is a really good application of the technology.
Yeah, I think you mentioned data, and I think Alex pointed out a couple of interesting data points. That we've seen like a 50% drop in the commission volume, like the take-home pay for the real estate industry from 2021 to present day. I'd say that's pretty accurate. Like, we went from high valuations, more transactions, to lower valuations and way fewer transactions. And we were talking before about how this really is representative of a market cycle. You've obviously been through a couple of these yourself, and with I think even like you had been in the Lava Life thing, sort of in the fallout of the .com bubble even. What does that look like from your perspective? And what are the lessons that you would give to real estate professionals about how to survive this kind of downturn?
Well, the first nugget that I heard you say there, was the shrinking of the margin, right? The shrinking of the take home. We are under cost pressure everywhere. All the more reason to have the fixed part of what you have to do to complete a deal taken care of somewhere else, right? I mean, if you're loading up your brokerage with expensive people to do back office, when that cycle happens and that downturn happens, that cost still sits there. So it means there's less money to go around. So one of the advantages of a place like myAbode is let us handle it, right? We're there through any cycle, right? Boom or bust. But on the bust side, which you referenced, when the margins are getting squeezed, you're not carrying that overhead on your own income statement, right? So as it pertains to cycles, I mean, again, at the risk of aging myself, I've seen a few, right? And it's called a cycle for a reason. And, my advice on people that are dealing with it or industries that are susceptible to it is just that. It's called a cycle for a reason, because they end. So, when things are going great and you're making all kinds of dough and you've loaded up on expenses and the margins can handle it, and you're happy, don't hang on to that feeling too tightly, because it ain't going to last. It just doesn't, Likewise, though, the good news, maybe more relevant to the time we're in now, there's a bottom to it too, and we will come out of this as well, because you just do. So what do you do in the meantime? You button down the expenses, you outsource what you can, and maybe consider doing that permanently, as we discussed. And keep doing the right thing with the right people, with the right core values around you and the right organizations, and we'll come out of it, right? You just got to hang in there and grind through it.
Yeah, I love that. I think now with, the boom and bust cycle, and then obviously we're in a bit more of a bust than we are in a boom right now, just coming off the tail end of a crazy bull run. Something a lot of people, especially in real estate, where it's really about, what did I get done? What did I get sold? Posting certain things. What a lot of people don't talk about in this industry is failure and their failures. And I'd be interested to ask you, Bruce, if you're comfortable, could you share any major failures, business-wise? We don't need to get personal, okay? But any major.
They run the gamut, man.
Any major failures that we could take lessons from? Because I mean, I'll be the first to admit in this room, I have failed a number of times. Still fail on a daily, weekly basis. Big failures, small failures. And there was a point in time where I was actually posting more failures on Instagram. Lost a client to the bank, or, this deal didn't go through. Yeah. As almost an experiment to see what the reaction would be. And the reaction was incredible. I had people reaching out more than if I posted the opposite. So I'm curious from
it's authentic, right?
Exactly.
Yeah,
so
exactly. Yeah.
So leaning into the fact that the market isn't great, leaning into the fact that things are, paradigm shifting right now into AI and all this new stuff that we're seeing. What are some failures that you've had that have been pivotal for you, that you've taken and grown from, and maybe we can, learn something from those?
It's so funny, right? Does anybody really know anybody where it's been up to the right on a straight line all the time?
I've got guys that tell me.
Management consultants in their pitch decks.
And not only do they tell you, but the way that social media works and how the algorithms are fed, it seems sometimes like it's a constant barrage of success, happiness, and lying on the beach, and walking off into the sunset, right? It's quite remarkable how you can get thinking that, maybe I'm not that fucking great, maybe I'm, because everyone else seems to be doing so well. You decide to be an agent or a broker, you decide to be an entrepreneur. I call it my 51-49 rule, right? 51% of the time you're pushing the noodle ahead for the inevitable 49% where things aren't going your way. And the good news is that that's net 2. And if you can do that every week, every month, sometimes a quarter, in a bad year, if you can push it ahead 2%, and you're moving ahead. If you can't handle that 49%, if you're the kind of person that, comes home and kicks the dog, or, not nice to your partner because you can't deal with the pressure of the inevitable 49%, then you need to find a different profession. It's just the way it is. So, yeah, the topic of failure, all kinds, but it's interesting. 95% of them all have the same theme, right? And I'm my 65th year. It's finally, finally sinking in to the point where, I've got non-negotiables now. I won't work with anybody moving forward that can't get up in the morning, look in the mirror and say, look, I made a mistake. Or a good point, I never thought of it that way. Like introspection, some open-mindedness, because nobody has all the answers. And all of my mistakes in my business, of which there's been a ton, have been when I've ignored the core value meter and the lens, and sold out usually in the area of technology, because that was even though I was a technology investor and built a tech business, the engineers used to laugh at me because my knowledge, of how the technology worked was no screaming hell. It wasn't that great. And I'd usually sell out for the skill on the technology side, and sort of ignore the core value fit, because we needed that, in my mind, we needed that skill so badly. You get the short-term bump, and then, it burned me every time, right? So the advice for me is, put an inordinate amount of time into thinking about who your partners are, an inordinate amount of time thinking of, and this goes for life, or, we'll stick to business, but, think about the skill sets you need in your brokerage or your agency, or how to do more business for sure. Think about who you outsource to, but think about it not only from a technical fulfillment and a skill, this is a skill we need, but also what kind of people are they, man? Do we share a set of core values that are, conducive to what we're trying to do business-wise, but also, when the inevitable 49% happens, that's when shit hits the fan. Like, everyone can be a great person when it's up to the right and we're in a bull market. Everybody's kumbaya. But watch what happens when the wheels come off, right? Because that's when true characters come and you realize who you're in the battle with. So, that would be my advice. And specific examples, almost too many to mention, right? 51-49. Luckily, the 51% of the time they've gone right in a big way, so I'm ahead, but not by as much as you might think by looking at Dragon's Den, right? Yeah.
I love that. I usually say that real estate is about two things: the people and the numbers. Obviously, it's a business. You need the numbers to work. A lot of different types of numbers in real estate, but you need the people to work, because no matter if it's a tenant or an electrician or an appraiser or a commercial real estate agent or a banker, there is a number of people, a power team that every real estate agent or every mortgage agent or every investor needs. And we talk about all the time how important it is to find those people. How do you find those people?
Wow. Okay. Well, I put some time into it, first of all, right? And again, the times where I haven't put time into it and I've been opportunistic, it's hurt me. But when I've built successful organizations, I've sat down and said, I've actually defined what the core values that I'm looking for are that are conducive to that particular industry. So, using Lavalife as an example, we were an online dating site, very open-minded online dating site where, if you showed up for a job at Lava and you were you were homophobic, right? Your religion didn't allow you to, or you're homophobic, or your religion didn't allow you to sort of condone premarital sex, for example. Nothing wrong with that. To each their own. Religion's cool. But you wouldn't have been a good fit with us because we were all about premarital sex. Well, we weren't all about we were a lot about premarital sex. So, if you came in...
That was a different website.
Yeah, that's right.
Right? Yeah.
No, if you came into our place with a closed mind about how people were opting to live their life, right? Judgmental, or, inflexible, you wouldn't have been a good culture fit with us because we were a very open, to each their own. We provided a place where people could interact and get together for whatever they wanted. So, leave your judgments at the door. And the other obvious ones are, if you're going to work in a successful team, it was really cool. We used to run these, these interview screening when we were really serious about hiring people, we put 8 people in the same room for the same position and have them fill out sort of NASA Man on the Moon exercise, it was called, right? Where you were crash landed on the moon. Here's a list of 12 things that you need to survive. They have a priority to them. Like some are more important than others. And the exercise was to rank, order, priority the things you needed to survive on the moon. You know, food, water, you know, an Elmore Leonard novel. I can't remember what was on the things that you needed, right? But you had to go through it. And so they went through it as an individual. And then we divided the people into sort of 3 groups and asked them to do it again. And in all the years of me running that test, I never. Now, Bram, you were never one of them. Bram may have beaten this stat. Very smart guy, one of the smartest guys I know. But in general, no individual beat the collaborated score, right? So that showed people that if you're serious about working at our place, you had to be, you know, a team player. And why are we so serious about it? Well, we just showed you, right? But the really interesting thing was we got to watch how people work together, and they knew we were watching, and we were on them, and people's behavior came out, right? And it was usually the guys. Sorry, guys, I'm just the way it was. It was like, no, you know, this is more important because, you know, what was the example? You know, water's more important than solar blankets, not realizing that if you froze to death, they're dead, right? There's no, like, you know, all the water in the world's not going to help you. But the guy, you know, taking a position, digging in his heels, you know, and the ego was obviously getting in the way of reason. So that was a real live example of how, you know, if you weren't, you know, open-minded and that kind of value, you wouldn't have been a good fit with us, no matter how smart or, you know, technically adept you were. So we really got serious about screening, you know, for that kind of thing. So that's how it's supposed to work. That's a lot of work. And it, you know, sometimes you sell out to being opportunistic. This agent's going to bring me 60 deals to the, you know, right away to the firm, but, you know, something doesn't feel, anyway, it just, you really got to sort of stop sometimes and, you know, and take a breath and say, what's beneath it, right? Yeah. What's beneath the, you know, apparent, like, wonderful technical fit here?
Yeah. Yeah, you mentioned like before the culture fit, the technical pieces and like specific skills or roles that people needed to fulfill. And I think we're sort of entering into an environment where when we talk about technology and AI, and I think I'd like to kind of use both because I think a lot of people conflate like AI with just like other automation, you know, like what tasks can we just automate away that don't involve an LLM. When, you know, in the tech space, I think they use this framework called like jobs to be done. If you were to like use your sort of technical knowledge and apply that to the real estate space, what do you see being like, you know, for all of the realtors or broker owners here to give them like some practical advice? What are like the top 3 things that people can do with technology right now to change their business? Like they're going to get their pens out, write this down, and their business will be drastically different tomorrow.
Well, I mean, I'm going to oversimplify it to a great extent, right? I'm going to say, stick to what you're good at, developing human relationships, stay close to your clients, don't lose the human touch, and partner with a company like this to take care of the rest.
Yeah, fair enough.
myAbode.
Yeah.
And let people do what they're, you know, what like we're investing in a technology future that is moving at an incredible speed, that is going to require resources and know-how, and we intend to win it in Canada. We intend to win it. So, you know, if you want to join a team that is going to win, right, and provide you with the tools to not displace the human element, but to do your job better, more efficiently, get paid, take that stuff off your plate so you can do what we've spent, you know, 20 minutes talking about in terms of human connection, then that would be my advice. So I don't got 3, I got 1.
Fair enough.
Love it. Why real estate, Bruce? That doesn't seem like a
Yeah.
you know, from you know, online dating,
Selling
but like
cars to online
yeah,
dating,
from
like
trees, cars.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
we've got all these things. I know Maslow's hierarchy, so don't give me that
Yeah.
again. But
Okay.
you know, but you know, we and a lot of people in this room will probably know some of the stats I'm about to drop. But I mean, you know, real estate makes up an exorbitant amount of the GDP here in Canada, right? There is so much money that is produced and circulated, whether it be through, small bathroom renovations, subdivisions, infrastructure projects, contractors, mortgage agents, everyone in this room. What attracted you to get involved in this space in Canada? Was it because it's so big? Was it because you looked at it and you realized that it was probably ripe for some change? What were the factors that led you to getting your hands in here?
I personally have an embarrassingly low expertise in real estate, I would say. My expertise, investing acumen, amounted to, well, I might as well own the house I live in, right? And, I hung out enough in Whistler. I like to ski. Got excited about was hanging out in Mexico, got excited about the resort real estate boom. I knew enough to line that up with the macro environment that people are going to want more resort opportunities. So I made some individual investments in resort areas that panned out very well. I ignored the adage that you should never sell real estate. I got excited about the gain, sold it too soon. Mistake, right? 49%. But did well enough that way. And aside from that, I've left it to the experts. I've made investments in, Class B commercial in Toronto through a fund that was started by guys that I deeply trust, that I went to high school with, that, they wrote it up and got out before Class B ran into trouble. So I've really deferred to the experts on that. As an investment firm at Round 13, we were, the most excited at one time about software as a service businesses. They were, software was eating the world. There was all kinds of great recurring revenue models that were sticky. Once you got a customer, the customer didn't churn, and they were popping up everywhere. And we had our hands full. Even though we decided to focus strictly on Canada. We think there's enough to do in Canada. We think it's the best country in the world to build a business. There's more than enough business to be done. And we wanted to be in our own backyard so that we could easily check out the people we were backing, for example, back to the trust and the values and who you get in bed with as who you're backing. But then what happened in 2021 is the market went crazy, on multiples, like at cycle, right, as it does. And thankfully, I have disciplined partners around me that said, you know what, we're not chasing that. But what do? We're pretty good at understanding tech, and we're pretty good at understanding, where tech's headed and what it can do. Why don't we start looking at more traditional businesses and see if we could bring a tech enablement lens to those? And that's what led us to a big sector, right? Like a real estate. Another example in our portfolio is we've taken another cut at the veterinary clinic business, right? Putting a tech forward lens on veterinary clinics, so that, every client has an app and, the leading edge, medical devices in the clinic, and just very modern sort of, technology forward approach to a traditional industry again. Real estate, one of my partners in particular had a great affinity for real estate, knows real estate very well, and said, this is an industry that, for all its good things and how important it is, it's lagging, right, in terms of what technology can do to make, in this case, agents' lives easier.
Yeah. I love that perspective.
So opportunistic, right?
Yeah.
Entrepreneurial. Don't stick to a thesis at all costs, especially if you decide you want to, as an investor, we want to focus on Canada. Canada's a big country, but it's really not. It's not that big a country. So we couldn't afford to pick one area and put the blinders on and go deep and ride out cycles and, sit. We had to stay flexible. And this one was just sort of screaming at us.
Yeah. I'm glad you finished with that, because I was going to bring it back to something you said sort of in the middle there about Canada. I think this will be the last question that I do before we maybe open it up to the floor. So if anybody wants to get their thinking caps on and something they'd like to ask. You mentioned Canada is the best place in the world to build a business. And I think right now we're going through this like existential crisis with this country, and it feels like there's a lot of anti-Canada sentiment. I try and present data and do it objectively, but I feel like a lot of the data that I present ends up being interpreted as, very negative for Canada. Why do you feel that way about Canada? And like, what's the bull case here?
Okay. Well, the caveat I'll throw out is that I've often been accused of being overly patriotic, right? So I can have the blinders on too. I've had a number of opportunities to live elsewhere, and I've seen a lot of smart money leave this country. And, it's funny, in my glass half full view of things, there's a lot of smart people leaving, more opportunity left for me. That's how I kind of looked at it. The other thing I'll say is I've been challenged lately because, even though I'm actually a lifelong liberal, I'm embarrassed about the 10 years prior to this one about what's gone on here, right? And it's just like, even for the most ardent Canadian supporters, like there's no question that we've fucked it up pretty badly, right? I mean, the leadership fucked it up pretty badly in so many different ways. So I understand where the crisis has come from. It's been well-founded. Why do I still think it's the best country in the world to live in, raise a family, build a business? Because I think we recognize that the assets that we do have are extremely important. We've historically been pretty good, particularly in the area of tech, of supporting technology startups through government funds and the SHRED program, which is, basically encourages companies to go out and innovate, and the government will pick up part of the tab because the IP looks like it's going to stay in the country, that kind of thing. And listen, I don't want to live in the States, I mean, it's like that's the only other alternative, I would say, in terms of opportunity in the Western world that has that same kind of opportunity. And it's, I mean, where do I start? Like, it's such a polarizing environment. I'm in such violent disagreement with how things are being done and executed down there. And I think, in many ways we'll look back, and all apologies to anyone that may be visiting from the States or contemplating a move there. I think we'll look back and actually be very thankful that Trump got elected, because it's going to force us to get our act together. So it's always been a good place to build a business. Last 10 years have been challenging on many fronts with many policies, but I think the wake-up call has come, and I think we're going to turn the corner, and it's going to once again be a great place to build entrepreneurial companies.
Yeah, I love that. One more from me, and then we'll turn it over to anyone who's got a question. You're talking about building a business. A lot of people in here have built business or are currently building businesses. What kind of scares me, Bruce, is we just researched and wrote an episode on youth unemployment right now, which is, I don't know if anyone's aware, but it is really, really bad in Canada right now. And the ripple effect of that has some pretty scary potential narratives. So what would you say, and I'm sure there's people with kids in here that may be concerned about that, or that know someone with that. You're 18 years old. You're 22 years old. What are you telling those kids? If you can't go get a job, go start a business. What does that look like?
It's a great question, and I think it's my first message would be to young people. There are many, many different ways to get an education, right? So again, I had a front row seat to a guy that showed up here with a grade 8 education and about $40 in his pocket. So there was no privilege behind my dad's story. So I'm biased, and I've got an advantage because I sat and watched this guy, right? He was very good with math, started keeping the books at a local car dealership. At night, he'd moonlight by keeping the books at the local Canadian Tire, knew how to keep a set of books. His talent got recognized. He got backed. He worked his ass off. He parlayed that into a car dealership, parlayed that into a chunk of land, 18 acres up at Yonge and Steeles, the first Canadian auto mall in the country, and that we still have in the family. So I'm biased, right? But the education system in this country hasn't really changed in 150 years. And somewhere along the line, we've got it into our heads. Maybe it's under the guise of evolution or, we're so wealthy as a society that it's just a given that our kids, of course you're going to university. Of course you're going to go get a degree. And we're asking kids a year earlier than I had to decide to make up their mind about what they want to be when they're like 17. And when I went through that too, I didn't have a clue. But when I went to school, it was $3,500 a year. I planted trees, came back, cut my tuition check, put aside a bit to live. I wasn't draining putting my parents into debt to send me to school, and I wasn't a good student, but I learned how to live with people. I learned how to get along with people. Played a sport at the school, bought a house, sold some stereo equipment. I was an entrepreneur. I wasn't getting it from school. Now my daughter is an academic. She's in Montreal at school. She should be in school. That's the way she learns. But this blind, this is the path that everybody should be on. Okay, go do it. You get your degree, you come out of university, guess what? Doesn't have any application, and youth unemployment is going through the roof. Meanwhile, can you get anybody to, remove your snow, paint your house, build your deck? There's lots of occupations that don't involve philosophy 101, right? Or poli-sci 237, or I think a degree's overrated. That might be a very controversial thing to say. And, apologies if I'm putting thoughts in kids' heads that are going to disappoint their parents because, everyone needs to have a university degree, but I just actually don't believe it's true. So I think the root of the problem is we go off we become like sheep. And, you cut the check, off you go. You sit through 3 or 4 years of things you're not really into, get a university degree, and you expect it to be handed to you coming out the other end. Guess what? Those 4 years may have been better spent growing a business, getting your real estate license, selling some cars, understanding how people work. And again, this isn't a blanket statement. There's so many people where a university degree is so important and so valuable. And, I've always partnered with people that understood, balance sheets and higher level finance because I didn't pick that up in school. I wouldn't have been able to pick that up in school, right? But I know where to find those people. So it's just it's not one size fits everyone. I think we've gotten kind of brainwashed in a way into thinking that that's the only route. And I think that is a contributing factor to the issues that we're having today.
Yeah, I would agree. I think you picked a good room to mention that too, because I think as realtors, most of us don't have a post-secondary education. So
and you're all forcing your kids to go right into the business too, right?
Yeah. Do we have anybody who wants to ask a question from the floor?
Oh, you guys know everything, eh? Okay. Guy that dressed as a grape in the back. Yeah.
You mentioned buying real estate in Mexico. I'm just curious your experience with that and where in Mexico you ended up buying and what you bought, what type of property.
Yeah, I got excited about it and then didn't buy. So I was using that as an example because I was hanging out in Whistler long enough to know that this was, they don't make land like that anymore. I think it's the best ski terrain on the planet. So hung out around there long enough to understand the market and ended up, buying 3 properties. But then when I was vacationing in Sayulita down in Mexico way back, 25 years ago, looking around and all the Whistler people were down there. All the early homeowners from Whistler were down there, which was a very, and looking for real estate, which was a very good indication that was going to be the next thing. So it was a bit complicated down there. I remember looking into it enough to know you had to partner with a local, right? And it was complicated. And I didn't have the time to put into figuring it out. But a lot of people did and did quite well by it. So
Dave's Dave's a realtor in Toronto and Mexico, so he's just out here hunting
You
for a
wanna buy
deal.
something?
He's
Yeah,
looking. He's
well,
out here just classic
actually-
realtors, eh? They're-
Yeah, I actually do. I like north of Puerto Vallarta, north of
super cool.
Sayulita, San Pancho.
Yeah,
You know
yeah.
San Pancho?
Yeah, I live in south like Quintana Roo, so like Cancun, Playa del Carmen, Tulum. But a lot of our business is now shifting over to Merida, which is getting really popular. And then Puerto Vallarta is going crazy too.
So there's the opportunities are still real and
Yeah.
up to the right.
yeah.
Okay.
Dave's got a contract in his bag, so
Yeah, okay.
I'll meet you. I'll be standing outside after. Yeah.
All right, Dave. As
Thanks.
long as don't send me an AI bot to close it though. Just it's got to be you, man. You know.
I saw another hand go up here. Yeah, well, we're gonna bring you a mic just because this is a live podcast recording. So
Yeah, just quick question going back to talking about myAbode and all that. And you guys are doing a brokerage model. Did you ever think about adding like an individual model, or is just you guys are only dealing with brokerages at this point?
That's a good question. You want to step in on that one, Alex?
are you gonna do myAbode for individuals, not just
Yeah.
for brokerages? So deal processing for individuals.
Can anybody participate, or do you have to be part of a brokerage?
Yeah, you need to be part of a brokerage. It's brokerages, essentially, agents are our users, brokerages are our partners and who we do that with. So it's important to align yourself with a great brokerage that can, do everything that you needed to do and allow you to focus on building your business as well. But the short answer is, yeah, we have some things now and a lot more coming as well that are going to allow agents through the brokerage to sprint full speed and spend less time in the weeds and more time making money.
Amazing.
Any final questions? Anybody? Okay, I just want to say thank you so much to Alex and myAbode and the team at Valerie and everyone that put this together, and of course to Mr. Bruce Croxon here for gracing us with his time and his experience and knowledge. So
And I can't imagine there's anybody in the room that doesn't listen to you guys, right?
oh, I would imagine. Yeah,
Okay, well,
but-
We know who you are.
So I in prep for this very prestigious occasion, I started listening to the podcast, and you guys are great, man. Like,
Thank you.
so anyone
Means a
that
lot.
doesn't listen, tune in, because I think you guys do a heck of a job. You got to be
there you
working.
go. Listen to this guy. All right, thank you so much.